Might not work for another. Well, now a new medical study from the University of Washington backs up the theory. It says caretakers should style their method of parenting around a child's personality, and the change could help lower depression and anxiety symptoms in children. With more on these findings, we are joined by the lead author of the study, Cara Kiff. She is live with us from the University of Washington. Good morning. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, and we need to explain a couple of things before we move forward, and let's talk about what self-regulation is.
Sure. So we can think about that as sort of self-control, or the amount that kids are really able to persist at the things that they don't want to do, like do their homework even though it's sunny outside, or lower their voice when they need to. And it also applies to things like emotions. So modulate big emotions, either being really happy or really upset, to act socially appropriate and really problem solve and engage in the things that they need to do every day to be successful.
You would think that kids who can self-regulate either their actions or their emotions are already off to the races, and that parents, wouldn't have to do much with them. Tell us, what's the parenting style advised for those children?
Yeah. For those kids, really parenting that promotes independence and autonomy and freedom to sort of let these kids shine seems to work best. And parenting that seems to come in and guide too much or structure, or really try to tell kids too much what to do or is too controlling, seems to be negative and really associated with anxiety and depression.
So less is more for these kids in terms of control?
Yes, less is more.
Okay, what about
they already have a lot of strength, yeah.
Right, within themselves. Now, what about the children who aren't so self-regulating?
Now, those kids, it's really interesting because generally this sort of parenting advice has suggested that more independence and more freedom is going to be beneficial for kids. But we know that these kids who aren't as good at modulating their behavior or their emotions actually benefit from more structure. So parenting that's less hostile and more structuring and even more controlling seem to be better for these kids.
Now,
and that predicted declines in anxiety and depression.
But I mean, any parent will tell you, if you've got a child who misbehaves, to use a phrase, would resist more control.
Right, and so I think what's challenging here for parents is that the goal is really to facilitate children's independent navigation of these tasks, but what we know is that based on children's characteristics from this study, that the level that parents are going to need to step in or step out is going to depend on the child. So while the goal is to help them be more independent ultimately, that might look like more giving step-by-step instructions and then sort of eventually backing off as kids are able better to do that by themselves.
I can see this being a fairly workable plan if you've got one child or maybe two, but if you've got more than that, how is a parent supposed to diagnose their children?
As far as their personality characteristics?
Yeah.
I think that parents would likely be able to tell you pretty quickly, oh, well, I know that he can take care of himself and get himself out the door when he needs to in the morning, while Johnny maybe has more trouble. And so I think that parents just comparing their children to one another as far as their strengths and weaknesses, and also to other kids maybe at school, are pretty able to tell you what works with one kid versus another. And I think the findings of this study suggest that parents really should trust that instinct to know that their parenting style, when matched to the needs of their child, is likely to be most effective.
All right, Cara, fascinating stuff. Thanks for your time and thanks for this study.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Coming up after the break.